Let's move on to Kate Harvey from Artichoke. Hello, Kate. Happy to have you here.
Hi.
So please tell us more about rooting light in the communities.
Maybe while the slides are just coming up, I'll just introduce Artichoke and our work. Artichoke exists as an organisation to work with artists to invade public spaces and to create opportunities for artists to transform the public realm through their imagination. Lumière was a project that we started over 10 years ago now, in 2009, in a city to the north of London. It's about 400 or so kilometres north of London, a city called Durham. It's a city which has a lot of history and a lot of heritage. Beautifully for people working in the field of light, it's a very dark city. So it's a medieval city with extraordinary dark, narrow, winding streets, some beautiful topography with the river. You see here one of the key historic buildings of Durham, which is the cathedral, here beautifully lit through Fujiko Nakaya's fogscape. Very soon after arriving in Durham, we realized that there was an extraordinary opportunity, not just because of the topography of the city, but to work with the communities and the people who live in Durham. So Durham is a former mining area of the UK. Here, this is the old Miners' Hall in the center of Durham. The mines closed over 30 years ago, so the vision for Durham really kind of is a mixture of communities that are known for one thing, maybe historically, and now the situation for the area is really very different. In working with light artists to come to Durham, we wanted to create an opportunity to really make a connection, not just between the light that we were bringing, but the people that were experiencing it and the people who were showing off their city. We obviously work with local people to provide the information and to provide the welcoming face. I mean, over 250 or so volunteers work with our audiences each year. But alongside that, we wanted to find ways where the communities could really interact with artists to produce something extraordinary. Here you can see the work of the Lantern Company and a parade that we created in 2011. Very quickly, we realized that with the kind of audiences that come to Lumière, the city typically has around 40,000 inhabitants. And each year, over the 4 nights of the festival, we welcome around 200,000 people. So it became very difficult to do performances like the lanterns that you've just seen. So we look for ways to work with communities in advance of the festival. Here you can see the work of brothers and sisters of the artist Ron Hazelden. We work with communities to get their thoughts on their identity, to enable them to inspire the artists that we invite to create artworks for the city, and to tell something of their story, so that the resulting program of each year's festival becomes a mixture of the artists and their skill, and the stories and the identities of the people who inhabit Durham year-round. In this project, we work with Hannah Fox to create a new kind of projection for the castle of Durham. This was called Our Moon. And over the 4 nights of the festival, the moon changed from being a very, very young moon to a very old and maybe more wise moon. And in order to do that, we worked with communities in the months before the festival, photographing and mapping their faces so that the moon literally reflected the faces and the people of Durham over the 4 nights of the festival. I think something that's very important for Artichoke is to work with artists who are really exciting and able to use light in a way that really makes people think about not just their identity, but the city and their position within it. And this is the work of a salto by Daniel Kanagar. in order to create this work, Daniel works with local people to enable them to work on a green screen, to crawl along it and to make it seem as if they're climbing and perhaps assailing an important monument within the city. In Durham, we had an extraordinary competition between, when we opened up the opportunity to participate, between the local fire brigade, who wanted to show off their skills in terms of climbing and assailing things, the police. We had a wonderful woman who turned up in her wedding dress because she saw the possibilities that were created by Daniel's work to really create beautiful shapes in the projection mapping onto the monument. And she came back during the session to reframe her work. Durham is a city, but it's also a county. So it's a very varied area with lots of rural towns and villages, as well as the central medieval city. And through our work, we try to work with people right across the region, so that whilst the festival takes place in the city, the thoughts and the experiences of people who live outside the city can also be reflected. And this is the work of the Brick Box, an extraordinary company who create opportunities for storytelling around an electric fireside. So the idea of telling your stories beside a fire, they create an electric fireside and involve communities in an extraordinary storytelling performance. In that festival, I think we worked with 3 different communities across the county. We also look for ways in which light art can be used live. As I said earlier, we find it difficult to do large-scale performances, both the sides of the crowd, and also we try to make sure that our audiences are always offered the same experience. So we try not, through the festival, to do time-limited performances, which might only be able to be visible to a certain proportion of our audience. Here we work with Cirque Bijou and members of the community to create a live performance in the street, which popped up sort of guerrilla style throughout the festival. And you could see these choreographed performances by members of the local community working with illuminated umbrellas, thanks to Cirque Bijou. In this way, the involvement of the community became also a way of helping the audience to navigate the festival. Here again are our friends, the firemen, and here we were creating a piece which really told more of the stories of the hidden public servants of Durham. So we worked with a UK-based company, Shared Space and Light, to create a projection that was going to be video mapped onto another building of important heritage for the mining industry, to really be able to tell the story of people who worked or work to keep Durham moving and to make sure that the population there continues to thrive. So we worked with the fire brigade, as you can see here. Also with teachers, we work with public health workers, and here you can see the work of Shared Space and Light, where they brought the stories of these people to this important and quite often overlooked heritage building in the centre of Durham, to really be able to tell audiences, both local and audiences who'd come from afar, the varied experiences of people living and working in the city. This is a very different kind of work, working with communities. We invited the artist Pablo Valbuena to come to Durham to be inspired to create a new work for the Cathedral of Durham. And as part of the site visit, we took Pablo around the cathedral and into all the nooks and crannies. And he was very inspired by the bell chamber. And he wanted to create a piece which he called Methods, which enabled the cathedral effectively to be played by the bell ringers, so that the patterns of the bell ringing methods, effectively the tunes and the almost like code that the bell ringers play to play bells live, could be translated into light. And so his extraordinary work methods played out both inside the cathedral and outside the cathedral. And the audience gradually came to realize that this was indeed being played by the bell teams that you can see here. This is a work that may be familiar to other light festivals, the work of Mr. Beam and Keys of Light. This is a piece where the piano links to the projection, so that people playing the piano effectively alter and change what appears on the building. And we worked again in Durham to make sure that this was an opportunity for people who both played the piano. So we worked with all kinds of community groups to enable people to play the piano. Perhaps we can just pause a little on the slides, Noé, so I can catch up. To enable them to learn piano skills. So not only did we put a call out for members of the public who already knew how to play the piano to come and perform, but we also worked with community groups where people had no experience of playing the piano, and we worked with musicians and keyboards to train young people and older people to take up playing the keyboard for the first time, and for them to be able to see their work on the building through Keys of Light. Thank you. We can go on to the next. Schools and colleges, obviously these are a very common source of work in ways to involve the community, and we do work in very traditional ways through teachers, through school groups. We also look for ways that artists are interested in expanding their work and maybe teaching students in a different kind of way. This slide shows some of the work we did with Durham Sixth Form College with Storybox in New Zealand on their piece Precious, which again has appeared at a few festivals across the world. We were obviously quite challenged working with artists in New Zealand on a workshop program. So we wanted to try to find ways that the skills of Storybox could both inspire the students who were studying photography and film to think about their work in a different way. And we organized a series of tutorials via Skype so that the students could learn the framing techniques of Storybox, that the students could actually engage the people directly that they wanted to represent. So the idea of this work is a person holding an item that is precious to them and telling the story of it. And it became an extraordinary intergenerational piece, which the students filmed and then sent the footage to New Zealand to be edited. And the piece was then played back to the residents of Durham, who told their stories to the rest of the population. And this piece actually inspired further work with Storybox and Okibu, which we did last year through Our Atoms Alive. This was a piece that again had a previous life in other light festivals, but we wanted very much to work with the artists to create a new chapter, and building on the experience of the students having been so involved in the previous Precious project. We wanted them to develop their filmmaking skills to actually invent a new chapter of Our Atoms Alive, to root the story very, very firmly in the city and landscape of Durham.
Kate, just to let you know that maybe a few minutes more, because we have already quite a few questions in the chat, and it would be good to...
That's fine. This is just an example of how we've taken our work one stage further. So this is a piece by Maida Vireman of an extraordinary building in Peterlee, which is a district outside the city of Durham, where we created a piece to celebrate the 50th anniversary of this building. And it inspired a project that we were then able to work with students from one of the local colleges to bring their work back to the festival in Liftoff, which is the piece that you see in the next slide. If we can just move with the slides now, Noé, we'll be fine. We also work, I think, quite unusually in a light festival with the hidden populations of Durham, and that's the prison population. So you saw in the previous slide images of boxes that were created by prisoners working with artists to tell of their hopes for the future and their thoughts about their experience. So we created a series of light boxes that you can see here that were then gifted back to the people in the prisons, because obviously they weren't able to visit the Light Festival. This was a piece that was then developed further on the experience of working with the prison population in our next image, where we worked with a poet to create a permanent light text for the city of Durham, which is inspired by women in the women's prison in Durham, working with the poet Hannah Jane Walker, to again think about what a sense of hope for the future might be. And this extraordinary text, "Only You Can Write the Next Page," is now a permanent installation in the city. So that in this way, we really try to make sure that audiences that see the work of the festival also know that the festival is inspired by people living and working in Durham, and people who call the city home. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate, for this presentation. I think maybe you can already see that there are a lot of really interesting and praiseful reactions in the chat. People were very happy and interested to learn more about the installations. We know, as in LUCI, we had the chance to go to Durham, I think in 2017 for our annual general meeting, and it was indeed really a great experience. So let me see what questions we already have in the chat. There is one which sounds quite interesting, which asks you more about working with local communities. The fact that working with local communities, balancing that with a high level of artistic quality and expression is quite usually a challenge. So how do you balance community input and artistic quality? And which projects worked and which didn't? What were your, yeah.
I think as producers, we are kind of exceptionally placed really to be able to bridge what we see as maybe opportunities to work with artists with our knowledge of the local community. We always try to work with artists who have something extraordinary to say and something extraordinary to communicate. And we, in selecting the works that we do work to involve the community, because not all of the light works that we do have a high degree of community participation. We look for artists who are really interested in exploring that conversation with local people. So I think it's important to kind of to have a sense of what that opportunity might be. Sometimes you're asking artists to maybe explore something that they haven't before, and sometimes that's something that maybe the artists are less interested in doing, and that's fine. You know, we're not trying to say to everybody there has to be this this connection. If it's right for the artwork, and if there's an opportunity for the involvement of people to be meaningful for the people that are taking part and also for the artwork, then I think it's a really good connection. In terms of pieces that work and haven't worked, I think happily all of our pieces have really produced something extraordinary in that sense of connection. As I explained, for us, it's quite difficult to work with pieces that are either time limited in duration or performance. So in terms of trying to work with you know, members of the community involved in a community performance where you have very large crowds, that's something that really needs very careful planning and to work out whether it's right for you. I think also having really, really good connections with the local organizations and making sure that you're kind of really aware of all of the opportunities that exist within a city. And we have really extraordinary partnership with Durham City Council, who commission the festival and provide extraordinary insights into their knowledge of their community and groups that we might like to connect with.
That also leads to two questions that were in the chat as well. A, the budget, where the budget for the installations come from, and also if you could tell a bit more about how you select the artists. selection process.
So the festival, as I said, is commissioned by Durham County Council and also supported by the Arts Council. And then Artichoke raises additional money from sponsors and from community trusts and foundations to support the work. I mean, there's a huge interest in projects that work with the community where you're able to provide extraordinary experiences for people. So I think the community work that we do is a real strength in terms of opportunities to connect with funders and organisations who are interested in supporting different aspects of the relationship between light art and place. In terms of how we select the artists, so we don't do a large call out. We recognise that that's some ways that some festivals work. We do a lot of research on light art through our producing team and light festivals. We also respond to interest from light artists who contact us. You know, we attend quite often this forum each year, Lyon, other light festivals, and we're always meeting and talking to artists when we're able to travel. We also create opportunities for artists to respond to a small-scale commissioning scheme, which is something we organise each year called Brilliant. So between those two areas, I guess Artichoke curates the programme, from our knowledge and from suggestions of artists that we've discovered on our journeys.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Kate. That's a lot of really interesting info for all the light artists in the audience and also the light festival organizers. So I think a lot of really great, inspiring ideas.